Hi, my name is Josh. I'm with the Gloucester County referees. If you're watching this, hopefully you've decided to help us out, and we really appreciate your help. So I'm just going to walk through basically an overview of how to referee the game. If you've done this before, this is probably mostly just refresher type material. This is more for folks that have never refereed basketball before. I'm just going to get right into it here. The thing about refereeing Little League basketball is all about the kids, and sometimes I have to remind myself that we're here for the kids. We're here so that they have fun, learn the game, get better with the game, obviously learn some good stuff from playing the game. More times than not, we should be refereeing the game, but also making sure the kids are having fun. Part of that is making sure we're doing our job, because if we're not, it can get pretty unfun awfully quick. I've got a lot to cover. We're not going to be an expert, I would say. There's still plenty to learn after watching this video. But I always tell folks, if you're watching this and you've never refereed before, do sort of the shopping cart thing. When you go into a grocery store, put a few things in your cart while you're watching this. Some things you might buy later. Why might you be here? Why might you be watching this? Maybe you have a son or daughter that play in the league. Maybe you don't. Maybe you love kids. Maybe you love the game. I personally don't have any kids that play in the league right now, but I just love kids and I love the game. I started a few years ago. I've actually been refereeing for, about 9 years now. I actually started out coaching the game, just, kind of fell into helping out, and then moved on to actually, refereeing all the way up to the varsity level at one point. And I started in Richmond, where you may or may not know there's some really good schools that have players that have gone on to really high levels of playing the game. And the class that I sat in was similar to this. There was someone in a classroom that kind of gave an overview. I believe it was actually about a week or two long. And one of those classes, there was a gentleman in there named Curtis Blair from the Richmond area who in just a few short years after sitting in the same exact class, worked his way up to being in the NBA. So I'm not saying that needs to be your goal, but I just think that it's pretty cool that he sat through the same type of class and worked hard and all that good stuff. So obviously the opportunities are there to advance. If you want to do paid games and things like that, that opportunity is there. If you continue to referee and get better, that opportunity is there. So just a few things as far as the Gloucester County League. We play high school rules all the way down to the 6 and 7 year olds, with usually amendments is what I would call them. So what that means is we don't play NBA rules, we don't play college rules, we play very similar to the high school rules and what Virginia calls for when it comes to that. And then as far as each age group may have a few amendments to those rules, such as, certain age groups, younger age groups, they don't allow a full court press, things like that. Just keep that in mind. We're going to get into refereeing and how to start the game and such, but if you're doing one age group and then another, the rules may change a little. I threw this in there. What is your attire right now? Ron Alston, the head of the sports, has said that as long as you just kind of got something to kind of designate, you can wear a black shirt, just something that, sets yourself apart from the kids. You can get a striped referee shirt, inexpensive in comparison to when I started. I think the internet has kind of helped out with that. When I started, a full uniform could cost you over $100. The shirts were certainly $30, $40, $50. The pants could be well over $50. And then once you throw in the whistles, you can go to Walmart now and get you a nice Fox 40 whistle. Not one of those whistles with the little ball bouncing around in it that sounds like, you got it out of a Cracker Jack box. But, a really nice whistle from Walmart now for, $5, $5, $6. So that it's certainly a lot better. Also, as far as attire goes, I'm not a brand loyal, but I just threw in a couple brands as far as Smitty's, one of the more well-known brands. There's a couple others as well, but I will say this, if this is something you want to do, you get what you pay for. So if this is something that you continue to do and you want to advance and do paid games and work your way up, you do get what you pay for. But again, if you're just doing the Gloucester, you're just helping us out, you're just doing volunteer stuff, just a black shirt, just a black shirt and a whistle is really all that Ron asked for you to have. And that's fine. It's certainly more than enough. Moving on, so starting a basketball game before the tip-off, you want to get there early. Just get there early enough to be able to check the books, check the rules for that age group, let the table know you're there so they're not kind of freaking out that the refs aren't even here yet, we're about to start. Again, we were talking about checking the rules for each age group, whether or not they have a full press. The rules could change. Check the scorebook. Again, in Gloucester, not as tight as some of the other leagues. As you move up, start doing higher age groups, it becomes a whole lot more important. I think in Gloucester, usually it's the gym administrator that takes care of it anyway. I typically put this in here. I think it's very important, especially at this level. I have a coaches meeting. Typically, what that'll consist of is, it can consist of whatever you want it to consist of, but I think ultimately setting the tone of the game, it helps out so much you wouldn't believe, because we all know that today parents get a little crazy, they're living vicariously through their children, they want them to win. So I think setting that tone and letting the coaches know what your expectations are. But I just think ultimately your goal should be letting the coaches know what your expectations are and all that good stuff. Again, at higher levels, when you start to do JV and varsity games, you're going to have a captain's meeting and things like that. But, doing this rec league at this level, basketball, I think having a coaches meeting more than anything, it helps out so much. It really does. And it sets the tone. Right before tip-off, we want to make sure that the ball's inflated properly. I've heard different theories on how to do that. The way I do it is I hold it up as high as I can and I let it drop, and as long as it comes up around to my waist, that's a properly inflated ball. I've seen people do the elbow rule and things like that, but however you want to do it, just make sure it's not flat and it's not overinflated is ultimately what you're looking for. You want to make sure that the kids aren't wearing any jewelry, especially anything hard, even things in the the hair, anything that could get snagged, anything like that. Are their shoes tied? You wouldn't believe how many times we have to tell the kids to tie their shoes. And really the jewelry and the uniforms and all that, that's ultimately about safety. I can't tell you how many times that the referees, we'll just let that go. We're not going to police that so hard. It's really not that big a deal. And then all of a sudden a kid gets hurt. Earrings are not allowed. Tape over the earrings is still not allowed. Earrings under no circumstances are allowed. Where are you going to be positioned if you are, doing the tip-off? So ultimately, if this is our court and they're about to tip off, you're going to have let's say we got team A on this bench, okay? And their player that's going to tip off is going to be in this area, and they're going to be shooting at this basket. They're always going to start shooting at the basket away from their bench. And again, so that means if team B's here, they're going to have a player here that's going to tip off, and they're going to shoot at this basket here. Those two players are the only two players allowed inside this circle or even stepping on the line of this circle. So everyone else needs to be positioned outside the circle, and they also need to come to a standstill and be holding positions before we start the game. I'm going to check with the table and my partner before the toss, and then I'm going to toss it. And usually I'm looking for a thumbs up from my partner. Again, getting back, so if you're tossing, you might start here, and point each direction. The colors you're going to be calling, blow your whistle. Your partner and let's say the table's here, your partner's going to be positioned about right here, okay? And we're going to get into the positions in a moment, but whoever this guy is here is going to become what we call the lead. So that means whoever wins this tip-off, let's say Team A's here, they win tip-off, he is now going to become the lead official and run to this baseline, okay? And then, of course, this tosser will become the trail, so he'll be here tossing, and then he'll end up in this area. So we'll get into those positions in a second, but I wanted to show you that. Okay, so we're about to toss. And so you're going to point in each direction, blow your whistle, and then you're going to step inside this circle pretty close to the 2 players right there, and you're going to drop your whistles. And the reason I go over that is a couple things. Number one, it's safety for you. That's why you want to drop your whistle. You don't want the kids to be jumping for the ball and one of them to hit you in the mouth. It's happened before and you lose a tooth. So that's the first thing. And the second thing to keep in mind is if you're, this official and you're tossing, the other official is at that point the only official. So this official right now is officialing, they're refereeing the entire everything at that point. So just keep that in mind. Again, start refereeing right away. And the point of that is a lot of times I've seen games start, they toss the ball, and something happens, and it's so fast right there at the beginning because the game is coming underway. You got this ball that's been tossed, guys are swatting at it, things are happening so quickly. So this official up here just needs to keep that in mind, that they're watching a couple things. They're watching fouls right away. Don't be afraid to blow your whistle right out the gate if something, boom, happens. There's a thing called a backcourt violation, and that means if Team A is, again, jumping here and they end up with the ball some way, somehow, and they've established possession in what's called the front court, being this side of the court near their basket, and then end up back on this side of the court over here some way, somehow, then that is a backcourt violation. So a lot of times on tip-offs, it can all happen so fast. Team A here bats at the ball, and it ends up over here. Team A establishes possession here and then tosses it back to this guy within a half a second. You already have a backcourt violation starting the game. And then lastly, with the tip-off, is just keep in mind the possession arrow. So we're going to go more into jump balls and possession arrow and things like that. But again, if here's Team A, if they win the tip-off, they bat the ball over here and they establish possession, Team B then gets the arrow. So even if Team A still gets that backcourt violation, if they establish possession, they were the first team to establish possession, then Team B is going to get the arrow. And they're going to get that next jump ball or the ball at the next, quarter. So just keep that in mind. If I go over something that just doesn't seem to sound right or make sense, I don't know everything, but if you do have any questions or something just doesn't seem to make sense or whatever, you need more clarification, reach out to, again, Ron or someone at the rec department, and they'll have my number or a way to get in touch with me. And, we definitely want to make sure that you have confidence in the rules and you're clear on things. Okay, so the game started. We do a 2-man rotation versus a 3-man that you'll see in college, NBA, and even higher levels of high school. You're just keep that in mind that you do have a partner, and so where you're going to be located is, again, you're going to have a lead and a trail, and as soon as you go to the other end of the floor, you're going to swap. So this trail right here is going to become the lead down here, and then the lead here will become the trail here, okay? So if back to this side of the court, with the trail being here, everything in red is his responsibility, okay? And everything in yellow is the lead's responsibility. So you need to keep that in mind too, because of your position. You should never be a statue. You should be always moving. If you're seeing things, if the ball is in let's say you're the trail here and the ball's, somewhere in your zone here, you need to be moving so you can see in between the offensive person and the defensive person. Because if you're behind one or the other, you might miss something. Also keeping in mind, this is our responsibilities here, right? But you also, a good official, as you do this more and more, this is a great template to keep in mind and to stick to. But also keeping in mind that these lines can move in a game as you start to officiate more and more, realizing that if you're the lead down here and the ball's up here and the trail's watching, what's going on there, a good lead official will then understand that something could happen over here and he might not necessarily see it. So you should be constantly kind of looking around, making sure. You never want to be a ball watcher. So if this lead if the ball's here and the lead is watching the ball and the trail's watching the ball, something could happen over here and both officials miss it. So just keep that in mind. This is something an image I found online. I think it's a great image showing, kind of where both guys are looking here, where their positions are. Back to this scenario here. Also, I went over that the trail needs to be moving and constantly looking between the offense and defensive players. The lead is always going to be mirroring the ball as the lead. So just keep that in mind. So if the ball is from the basket or anywhere on this side of the court, this lead might move all the way down into here. Okay? So you can see more of what's going on. But there, at the same time, if the ball were to, swing all the way out here to this side over here, this lead needs to mirror that ball. He needs to come way out to here. Even if the ball is way up here, he needs to be mirroring that ball on that baseline. That's a good rule of thumb. Again, you might be in the game and decide that even though the ball is here, but there might be something going on here, and you might decide to move down here so you could see what's going on there better. So just, I'm just giving you kind of a good rule of thumb, and also just letting you know you're never a statue. You should always be moving. A good official is never just standing there, especially in a two-man rotation. So you want to communicate with your partner. Nothing's more frustrating than if you're sitting there and you're refereeing the game and your partner blows his whistle and makes a call and then doesn't signal or tell you what's going on. And you always want to be communicating with your partner, and don't be afraid to say help or to come together on something. So if the ball goes out of bounds and it was your area of responsibility, and you didn't see who went out on or whatever, don't be afraid to look to your partner and hey, did you catch that? And a lot of times I'll say help, and I'll look to my partner, and it could have been, getting back to this scenario over here, it could have been batted. The ball might have went out down here where the lead should have, it's his call, he's got to blow his whistle, but it might have been batted way up here, and he didn't see that. Don't be afraid to ask for help or to even come together in the middle of a game. Just motion, hey, we need to talk about something here. While I'm on the subject, out of bound lines, if you're the lead, you got this baseline right here, and you also have this sideline is your responsibility all the way down to this end of the court. So that means if it goes out, even if you're not sure who it went out on, if it goes out over this line, this guy should be blowing his whistle for sure. Okay? It's okay for this guy to blow his whistle too, but he's got to be blowing his whistle. That is his area of responsibility. And there again, the trail here, he's got this sideline, and then he has the half-court line for that backcourt violation that we were talking about a little bit ago. A jump ball, if you're ever not sure, so if you call for help, ball goes out of bounds, you call help, partner's not sure, you're not sure, it happens. You don't want it to happen, but it will happen. I'd say one or two games out of the year, it happens, unfortunately. Again, a good official, as you officiate the game more and more, sometimes you can even kind of, if you're not sure, you can kind of read the players. You'll know if a kid based on his reaction. I shouldn't probably even say that in this video, but it's true that you'll be able to read. Like if you see one player that's all excited and they run out of bounds, ready to bring it in bounds, that it wasn't out on him. Just something to be cognizant of. But again, if you're not sure who it went out on, partner's not sure, you gotta go to the jump ball at that point. Motion for jump ball is this right here, by the way. Your jump ball. Always back up your partner. Again, that's something that's kind of about managing the game, and that is if your partner makes a call, one of the coaches is like, hey, that's not what I saw from up here. Always back up your partner. Don't, there's nothing worse than you looking at that coach and being like, yeah, I didn't see that either from my angle, or whatever. You gotta, and my response to that coach would be, he must have saw something we didn't. He's closer to that call than we are. You got to back up your partner. If you don't, it can get real bad out there. If you're refereeing the game, your main goal in that is always to be refereeing the defense. And what I mean by that is, I would say a big majority of the fouls and calls that you're going to be blowing your whistle on are a lot of times going to be on the defense. It's just the nature of the game, and just keep that in mind. So a lot of your calls, or if there's, was that a block versus charge, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's all about the defense. You're refereeing the defense, and that will a lot of times decide when you blow that whistle on who that call is going to go against at that point. We talked about ball watching already. It never fails. Less experienced officials like to watch that ball and could very well miss something doing that. We talked about the possession arrow a little bit ago. If the Team B's got the arrow because Team A won the jump, Team B is now going to start the next quarter with the ball there. You always start, so if here's the table, you always start the next quarter right over here away from the table at the end, the half court line. So if Team B has the arrow, Team B is going to bring the ball in right there. They're going to have possession there. So, and then of course A would get the arrow at that point. Violations. Violations are rules that are broken in the game that don't warrant a foul. It doesn't go against you on your foul count. So what are some obvious, some of the more common violations? Well, let's talk about it for a second. What is a travel? A lot of guys, I've heard people that don't really, know the rules or the game or whatever. They'll talk about, multiple steps or this or that. Ultimately, to decide whether or not something is a travel or not, it's all about their pivot foot. That's it. Have they established a pivot foot? And what's a pivot foot? Well, I can't really get up and show you right now, but ultimately, when the player gets the ball, they are allowed to move without dribbling the ball 1 foot. The other one has to stay stationary. Now, that pivot foot can be picked up off the floor. It just can't be put back down. So that's why people, when they say, oh, well, they're allowed 2 steps. Well, technically, if these kid's coming down the lane, he picks up the ball, and then he puts 1 foot down, and then the other one down, and picks up that second foot going up into his layup. That first foot, he established his pivot foot, and then he never put it back down again, and it's not a travel. So that's really it's very simple. People overcomplicate it way too much, especially with some of these things these days with the Euro step and the jump stop and all these different things that kids are doing and being taught and stuff. Because people get confused with the whole 1 or 2 steps or 3 steps or all that jazz. It's all about your pivot foot. So just keep that in mind. Did he pick up his pivot foot and put it back down to the floor? And if the answer is yes, it's a travel, period. Lane violations. Lane violations are, especially like if we're going to go through in a moment where the players line up. Okay, so we're going to get it. Obviously, I jumped way ahead here, and we're going to get into all this in a moment. But if a player is right here, so player 3 right here on Team A, if he was to step in this lane before this ball is released, then that is a lane violation. Also, just keep in mind, all these players here on the sides, they are on the release when this player right here is shooting his free throw. And then the shooter and everyone else out here is on the hit. It's got to hit the rim, and then they can go, okay? Another violation would be this shooter right here has to hit the rim right there, right? So if they don't hit the rim, violation. Violation on the shooter, and then the white team here is going to get the ball. Out of bounds. If the ball goes out of bounds, obviously that's a violation on whoever last touched it. Where do you bring the ball in during a violation? Well, if it's an out of bounds violation, regardless of wherever on this court that it goes out of bounds, you bring the ball in where it went out of bounds. So that means even if it went out way down here in this little corner right here, the ball's got to be brought in on that corner, okay? You cannot bring it down here. Okay, so now if it's not an out of bounds violation, but it was any other sort of foul or violation that you're going to inbound it, imagine there is a diagonal line from this corner, the high post right here, all the way over here to this corner where the sideline and the baseline meet. Okay, imagine there was a diagonal line. Okay, if the ball, when the violation or foul happened above that line, it would be brought in here on this sideline, whichever the closest sideline is, above, basically wherever that happened. And if it's below that imaginary diagonal line, then we're always going to come here. Even if it happened way out here, if the violation happened right here, right? So if he traveled right here and now the other team's going to get the ball, they're going to get the ball right here. Okay? Double dribble. Doesn't matter how high the dribble is. They can dribble it way up here. They can, do things like that. Ultimately, all a double dribble violation is while he's dribbling, did the ball come to a stop? And then he continued to dribble. So that's ultimately just to keep it as simple as it can. Again, people make these rules way too complicated. Now, can a player be dribbling and fumble the ball, pick it back up, and then dribble again? Yes. A fumble by rule, if you determine as the referee that he fumbled the ball, he lost control of it, and then he picked it back up and reestablished control and then started dribbling again, that is legal. I hear that rule a lot of times misinterpreted or not refereed correctly. A carry, again, that's while you're dribbling. If you see a player, imagine if I have a ball right here, right? So there's the ball in between my two hands. And imagine that, so I'm dribbling. If my hand were to come at any time below 90 degrees on that ball, right, that's a carry. So sometimes you'll see players, they like to push the ball while they're dribbling. That's okay as long as his hand does not go past 90 degrees while he's pushing that ball, if that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions about any of these, let me know. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Let's go through these real quick. 10-second violation. In Virginia, again, this is high school rules. They have 10 seconds that if Team A, they're shooting at this basket, but they got the ball, they got possession of the ball back here. They have 10 seconds to get into the front court, okay? If you're ever inbounding the ball, they have 5 seconds to get that ball inbounds. And then they also, another 5-second violation is there's a thing called closely guarded in Virginia. And ultimately what that is if the offense has the ball and the defense is within, they're in legal guarding position within 6 feet of them. Well, let's see. They catch the ball. They don't start dribbling yet. They get 4 seconds, so that's 4. Then they start dribbling. Okay, now I've switched arms. I'll start counting, and then they get 4 seconds there. Okay, then they stop dribbling and they're holding it again, so they get another 4 seconds. So now we're up to 12. They got to do something with it at that point. Is the point? So they can't put the ball back down to the floor, so that's a double dribble. So they got to pass it, shoot it, do something with it. So ultimately, a player can only have the ball if someone's closely guarding them for a total of 12 seconds. So just keep that in mind as well. You get a ball hog that's not, that's trying to waste time, trying to peel time off that clock, and defense is within, they're closely guarding him, that's a violation. Just also keep in mind, you don't want to call it closely guarded. That's not for players that are driving to the basket. So if a player's dribbling and you start your closely guarded count and all of a sudden he starts driving to the basket, you don't want to get to 5 seconds and then blow a closely guarded count. That's not what that's for. 3-second violation, that is if Team B has their ball in this front court of this side here and they're in their front court, no player can be in this paint, we call it the paint, in this box right here, longer than 3 seconds. Again, at this level, I might give them 5 seconds. I might say get out of the lane. But, if you get a player camping out in that lane down there, again, I try not to call 3 seconds a lot unless I have somebody that just keeps breaking that rule. They're down there, 5 seconds. I've told them get out of the lane. I'm going to get them with a 3 seconds violation. Over and back, we went over that earlier. Essentially, that's if, Team A, if they're in their back court, they go into their front court, establish possession. They have to establish 3 points of contact, both feet and the ball. Okay? And then once they've done that and they're in their front court up here, Then if they go, step on this line or dribble on this line or whatever, that is a over and back violation. We talked about 3 seconds in the box. Also, just keep in mind that 3-second count always starts over if the ball gets shot. So if the ball's in the air, there's no 3-second violation. And also, that does not start until the ball is in the front court. So if Team B is here, they inbound it, they're coming down the floor, and of course he's got 10 seconds while he's dribbling around up here. If a player can camp out down here all he wants, until that ball makes it into the front court, he doesn't have to get out of that lane. So just keep that in mind. Kick ball, when is it not a kick? Well, it's not a kick when he didn't motion his leg in a kicking motion. So in other words, if Team A is dribbling and he dribbles it off of Team B's foot or his own foot or anybody's foot, it's not a kick ball. It's only a kick if Team A goes to pass it, Team B sticks his foot out, kicks the ball, and it can hit anywhere part of his leg or his foot to be a kick ball. So just keep that in mind as well. A knee, if he swings his leg out there and it hits his knee, kick ball violation. Swinging elbows is another violation. It's not a foul if he doesn't make contact, but it is a violation. So Team A shoots the ball, misses it. Team B gets the rebound, gets to the floor, and is swinging his elbows back and forth, trying to clear, somebody's trying to take the ball from him, and he's swinging his elbows back and forth. That is a violation. If he makes contact, it's going to be a foul. But if he does not make contact, but he's swinging his arms and his elbows, that is a violation. Let's also real quick go over your mechanics. So if you, it's going to be hard for me to do on the screen here with my hand straight up. So just imagine my hand is straight up here. If you're going to call a violation, you need to call it with your hand and a palm. Okay, so beep, put your hand up, violation. Okay. And then you're going to do your signal. So if it's a travel, I'm going to go, beep, straight up. And then I'm going to give my travel motion. Okay. And then I'm going to point, which direction it's that we're now going to go. Okay. If it's a foul, we're going to go over fouls in a second. It's a closed fist. Okay. Beep. Closed fist straight up. Okay. And then you can, when I was coming up through refereeing school and stuff, they had bird dogging where if you wanted to call your foul and bird dog and point at a certain player, you could do that. And I think that still is a good thing to do, because especially when you get those fouls where offense and defense, they make contact and they're not sure who you're calling this call on. Well, they're not going to be surprised when you beep and you bird dog at who you're going to call it against. I don't do it a lot, but I do it if it warrants. If you do call a foul, keep in mind you're going to go to the table with that. So if you beep, and that now you're going to walk to the table, and you're going to, first thing you're going to do is call your foul, and then you're going to look to your partner and tell him what you got, on the floor, and point where it's going to be coming in the ball. The ball's going to be inbounded. Or you call a foul and it was a shooting foul, so you're going to look to your partner and say 2 shots. You're going to walk to the table. When you get to the table, you're going to just let them know what you just called. And the way you do that is you're going to call color, number, the player number, and then the infraction. So the way that might look is white, number 2, hit, 2 shots. So again, white, number 2, hit, 2 shots. I like to kind of keep everything in a nice little box when I'm at the table. Bang. If they made the basket, right? So they shot, shooting foul, they make the basket. Of course, when you're there out on the court, you're going to motion that it was a made basket. You're going to get to the table. First thing you're going to let the table know, made basket, count it. Okay? Made basket, red, 24, red, 24, push. 1 shot, because they made the basket. So that's how you report to the table. Ultimately, I think starting out, again, if this is something you're just starting out, just getting the color and the number correct is something that you should definitely focus on. I've been there. You're in this chaotic and intense game, you blew your whistle and you get to the table and you forgot who the foul was on. Okay, so fouls. How much contact is okay? I would say as you are starting out with smaller kids, I don't want to see much contact at all. If two kids, make contact, somebody's getting a foul. So as you get to older kids, college, NBA, obviously that might change a little. But if we're talking about 9-year-olds kind of shoving each other around and stuff like that, I'm going to be blowing my whistle on that. Inadvertent contact, two players are going for the ball, that there will be inadvertent contact, and that, there are times where you may not blow your whistle necessarily because there's contact. Now, two players collide and they end up on the floor. At this level, I'm blowing my whistle. Somebody's getting a foul at that point. Nip the early stuff in the bud and it won't get out of hand. Right? So it was always taught to me that, the officials always catch the revenge, the retaliation, right? If you're early in the game and you're kind of letting the little stuff go and they're kind of putting their hands on each other and they're shoving each other a little bit, eventually somebody's going to get shoved and somebody's going to, retaliate. And so your attitude should be not in your game. Nip that early stuff in the bud. At this level, you can even tell them, quit it. Stop pushing. And the younger kids will respond to that a whole lot better than the older kids. It's rare at this level that you're going to run into somebody that is, sly enough to kind of be trying to get away with stuff. You know what I mean? Like you start doing those high school games and you'll get that, right? Referee the defense, we talked about that. I got a kind of a cool little video here about block versus charge. I just want to mention first though, before I show it, ultimately, if you're refereeing the defense, offensive player comes down the floor and they make contact and you now are going to blow your whistle and you're going to either call, a block, beep, block, or you're going to call beep, player control, offensive foul, and you're going to, point down the floor. The way you're going to decide that, again, I've heard all these different ins and outs and complicated ways of refereeing that. Was the defensive player in legal guarding position? How do you know that? Well, was he, first of all, looking at the offensive player, and did he establish a position to be defending that player? I've heard it taught that, who gets to the spot first and things like that, but ultimately, again, it's all about whether or not was he in legal guarding position. Was he in defense, both feet on the floor, and in defense, and then when they collided, if he was, you got to charge. If they collided and there was no, he didn't flop or anything like that, they don't have to necessarily have both feet on the floor, but they got to be, if he gets to that position first, and the reason they came up with that is they were having these kids, he's allowed to jump straight up with his arms straight up and try to defend a shot. And, so if he jumps, and just because he jumps, if the offensive player comes barreling down through there and creates a charge, foul, just because the defensive jumped straight up, does not mean that it's a block foul. Let's play this video real quick. I found this online. It's kind of a simple video, but it kind of goes through it. It's a good little video, I think, just kind of explaining it. So watch this.
The two biggest things they're looking for right here is, does the defender get his feet set? If his feet are set, and the offensive player goes into him, it's going to be a charge. The next thing that they're going to look for is, does he lower his shoulder? If he lowers his shoulder into the defender, most of the time they're going to get the charge call.
Okay, now we're going to demonstrate a block call here. Cody's going to attack. Shay's going to be moving his feet and turning into the defender. Therefore, it's obvious block call. All right, in this instance, Cody's going to take him off the bounce. Shay's going to be moving in position and gets there late. One thing we look at as central is his feet outside of the lane or he's inside the lane, because most of the time a blocking call will be called inside the paint versus outside the paint.
So that's just a good little video that kind of goes through block versus charge. Again, there's more to it than that, as you get to where you're refereeing, but ultimately, that's what you're looking for, okay? So those easy ones should be easy. Was he in legal guarding position, yes or no? If he was, charge. If he wasn't, block easily. Again, there's a sheet that I can get for you if you want to contact Ron. It has all the signals. So if it's not on the sheet, it's not a foul. So So ultimately, like the old school guys used to talk about over the back or reach or all these fouls. If they make contact, it's a foul, but over the back and reach are not fouls in Virginia High School League rules. That's not a foul. So just to run through these real quick: illegal use of hands, hand checks, things like that. That's if you, especially like if you see a player above the key and the point guard's kind of bringing the ball down, you see a guy putting his hand out on him, hand check, that is a foul. A couple years ago, or I believe it was last year, a point of emphasis is if he put both hands, it's an automatic foul on them. Of course, the hold call there, the block, push, player control, intentional foul, double foul. That's where if you both guys, you're going to call the foul on the offense and the defense. And then, of course, the technical foul. Technical fouls, when to give them. Obviously, if you have somebody that is being disrespectful towards you or another player, a technical foul. But there's other things. There's other rules in there that, so if a coach sends 6 players on the floor, that's a technical foul. If, we don't have to worry about it at this level, but if a guy is dunking and hanging from the rim, that's a technical foul. Things like that. There's a rule book you can get, and it goes through actually each time by rule that you are to give a technical foul. Ultimately, at this level, it's really a lot about sportsmanship. If they have poor sportsmanship, you're going to probably administer a technical foul. Flagrants and intentional fouls, especially if they're not even going for the ball and there's a lot of contact. Again, at this level, it's not like the NBA where there's a flagrant run, flagrant two, things like that. An intentional foul and a flagrant foul are not the same thing. If you call a flagrant foul, that player is going to be ejected at that point before a fight starts. And then if you get a player or coach that gets 2 technical fouls, then they're going to be ejected. In those cases, they're going to get 2 shots. We're going to clear the lane. One player is going to get 2 shots at their own basket. That team is going to get the ball. So if Team B gets a technical foul, Team A is going to shoot 2 shots and then get the ball. What if you have multiple technicals? You're going to administer them in the order that they were received. Dead ball fouls are technical fouls, and that means if we're in a timeout, if we're in a dead ball and a player shoves another one or whatever, and they foul another player, a dead ball foul is by rule a technical foul. Let's see, offensive fouls, player control. We talked about the charge, but obviously if a player fouls another player, shoves him, whatever. Another foul we see a lot at this level is the illegal screens. And ultimately what that means is if you have a player that's screening another player, if they're making contact, need to become a statue at that point. So if they make contact and then move in any way while making contact, that's automatically an illegal screen. Defensive fouls we already went over. Shooting fouls, we kind of touched on that. Just keep in mind, a shooter still in the air is still a shooter. So if you got a player that shoots a shot and then the defensive guy makes contact as he's coming back down, shooting foul. I hear that rule a lot of times not administered correctly. Free throws. We went over kind of for a moment where to line up earlier, but just to touch on it real quick. So if we got B as the red, let's say that. So the offense here is Team B and they're shooting. Team A here has to fill these 2 spots. The way they do it now is the first 2 guys, this guy and this guy, are going to line up just inside the block. And then those spots have to be filled according to high school rules. Unless it's a technical foul or end of regulation and they're still shooting fouls or something like that, and you've cleared everyone, then in that case they don't have to be filled. But in any other instance, those positions have to be filled. Okay, no ifs, ands, or buts. Usually at this level won't get a lot of guff about that, but just so you're aware. And then these folks up here, obviously they alternate. That can never change. And you can only have 3 on each side. So in other words, if Team A here does not want to fill this spot, they don't have to. They can clear out, but these 2 have to stay home. So 4 cannot move to 3 spot if 3 decides he's going to clear out. 4 has to stay there, and so on. So just keep that in mind. The only spots that have to be filled are the first 2 just above the block, and then everyone else cleared out. and only 3 on each side. There's no 4th. So all these players out here have to be there. Another thing just to note, that whenever you call your foul, you're going to be up here at the table. That trail is going to stay at the table up here, not over here where they have him here. So that's why I wrote here, refs are actually in wrong places here. And then this guy is going to step over to here in this area. We're shooting 2 in this particular case. When the trail is going to be over here, he's going to be reffing these guys, and this guy, right? So he's watching all that. If one of these guys violate the lane, these guys on the side go on the release. Shooter and everyone else goes on the hit when it hits the rim. So they're shooting 2, and the referees are lined up where they're supposed to be. The substitutions can only come in on the last shot. So if there's multiple shots, meaning more than one, whether it's 2, 3, however many, substitutions only come in on the last shot unless a player is fouled out. There is a 15-second count that the trail, and you don't have to have a big, your normal counts that are way up here. Just usually, just having your hand down by your side and moving your fingers with the count is usually enough for that. And then again, if someone violates, you'll administer that. If the defense violates, I don't blow my whistle right away. I will usually wait to see if the ball goes in. So if 3 jumps in the lane here before the ball gets released, I'm not going to just up and blow my whistle. I'm going to let one let go of that ball, see if it goes in. If it goes in, I don't even blow my whistle. If the ball doesn't go in, I'm going to blow my whistle, violation, another shot. If the shooter ever violates in any way, shape, or form, if they leave this area here before it makes contact, that's a violation. Doesn't matter if it goes in or not, basket doesn't count on a violation. Remember the shooter during a timeout. So a lot of coaches like to call a timeout during free throws. If I hear a coach over here yelling, timeout, 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 I'm going to blow my whistle. I'm going to look as I'm blowing my whistle and see who my shooter is. We went over, what your mechanics are as far as, if you blow your whistle, violation and foul and all that. Anytime you put your hand up in a palm, what you're doing is you're grabbing the clock. So like, again, during a violation, beep, I put my hand up in that open palm. But also, if I'm about to start gameplay, so if I'm about to inbound the ball, I'm going to grab that clock. I'm going to put my hand up, grab it, and hand the ball over to them. And then I'm going to bring this hand up and start counting. And then as the ball if they pass it in and it makes contact, chopping the clock out. Okay, and they kind of, chop it in. Okay. What you do on a free throw is very similar to that. So if the ball is being shot here, so this guy's shooting and the trail's here, as soon as that ball relieves his hand on that last shot, I'm going to reach up, I'm going to grab that clock. Now again, I know with some of these leagues or levels, it's a running clock at certain points, but a good table is supposed to look to you and to chop it because you're actually chopping in that clock, right? Trail here, ball's released, reach up and grab the clock. If the shot is missed and someone makes contact, boom, chopping it in. If the ball is made on that last shot, he's going to drop his hand without chopping, just bring it straight down. And now the new trail, because this trail here is about to go to this end and become the lead, the new trail is now going to grab the clock. And the ball is going to be inbounded on this baseline. So he's going to grab the clock and he's going to start counting. Ball gets inbounded, bang. He's going to chop it in. 1, 2, or 3 shots win. We went over if it's a made basket, they only get 1 shot, whether it's a 2 or a 3-pointer. If you call a shooting foul outside this arc, they get 3 shots. If you call a shooting foul inside the arc here, they get 2 shots, as long as the ball didn't make it in. Let's talk about team fouls. If a team overall has 7 fouls, any fouls that are made on the defensive end, they now shoot what's called 1-and-1, and that means that they shoot 1 shot. If they make it, they get a second. If they miss their first shot, they don't get another shot. It's a 1-and-1. And then if the team fouls get to 10 fouls, then they're going to shoot 2 shots, just like a shooting foul inside the arc. Okay, now wrapping up, how do timeouts work? Well, Again, at this level, it's different. Each league's different. In high school, they get 3 fulls and 2 halves. I think in Gloucester, they get 4 timeouts. I think 2 per half. And we just give them a full timeout, which is 60 seconds. 3-pointers, they are shot at the lower levels, believe it or not. And so the way that works is you're going to put one hand up. If the player releases the ball from behind the arc on a shot, put your hand up like that. It's going to look like that, but you're going to put it up like that. And then if it goes in, you're going to put up both hands, just like they do in the NFL for a field goal. So that's a 3-point basket made. If one referee signals a 3-point basket, the other one is to mirror it. Management of the crowd, players, and coaches, you'll get better with that. Gloucester's really good about supporting the referees versus other leagues. Other leagues, you better know how to manage the crowd and the players and the coaches because the support isn't as good. But in Gloucester, support's great. So if you're having an issue, a lot of times the gym administrators and even sometimes the other parents will step in with that. So that's great, actually. Finishing a game, just, again, you're going to call fouls right up until that last moment. As you get to higher levels, they'll start to talk more about who gets the last shot. If it's a 3-point basket, who's going to cover that and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into all that at this level. Good mechanics. I was always taught practice in the mirror at home. I will say that it helps me with my counts because if I never do that, I used to kind of have these, counts that looked all. You see these people that kind of have these weird looking counts when they're counting and refereeing. And, you can tell they don't practice in the mirror. But, having that good straight arm out and a nice count. That's good. Always be fair regardless of the attitudes or past. That should be self-explanatory. That's something I see a lot of refs struggle with. They'll say, well, Johnny over there is always an issue. We're gonna do this or that. Just referee the game. We talked earlier about backing up your partner. Take your time, stay calm. I always pride myself in, this is probably the hardest sport to be an official in. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that because I hope you have confidence in knowing that not everybody can do what you do. If you do this and you get good at it, not everybody can do it. Part of that is just with all the chaos going on, the crowd, the players, everything going on, take your time, stay calm. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate you watching this. Hopefully this helped. Hopefully you have confidence in blowing your whistle. Just ultimately watch other refs. It's funny, when I started, I love the game of basketball, but as soon as I started refereeing, it's funny, you watch the referees just as much as you watch the players after that. So that's kind of interesting. Last piece of advice I could give you is just be heavy on your whistle when you're starting out. A lot of referees, they're quiet with their whistle. They're not quite as sure and confident. I say to heck with that, blow that whistle. And even if you're still learning the mechanics, at least you got the call right. You blew your whistle when you saw that foul or that violation, and the rest of it will come. So if you have any questions, again, get in touch with Ron. I appreciate you watching this. Hopefully see you on the court helping us. So thanks.